Right now, the country feels as though things are slightly out of control. The first thing I want to point out to you is that things are not as bad as they seem. It's bad, it's concerning, but we also are fighters, and we are good people. And we have no intention of allowing the government or the country to go down a leftward track that threatens our future prosperity and our children's future prosperity. We recognize that people are angry. I recognize they're angry because I'm angry as well. I recognize also that Congress has become completely dysfunctional. We've talked about that for years, but the evidence of it is ever increasing, even as we speak. The dysfunctional nature of Congress has created an environment whereby people don't feel like they're being heard. If people don't feel like they're being heard, naturally, the anger escalates, and evidently it's escalating on both sides. So I want to address a couple of things really quickly with you today. The first is, why aren't you being heard? The first is, why aren't people forcing their representatives and their senators to do the right thing? The answer goes right to the heart, first of all, of who you elected. The way the process works, as you know, it takes an awful lot of money and time to acquire any elected office. Because of that, when members of a Senate or a House, any branch, are elected, they immediately, in some respects, and sadly so, become beholden to the donor class, to the powerful, to the established order. And that's part of the problem, because so many good conservatives run for office and they promise you they're going to hold the line, and they should hold the line. But they don't hold the line because leadership or the establishment really doesn't want them to hold the line. And so they make a devil's bargain, if you will. And the bargain is that I will get my bills passed at the expense of the people. I will have things accomplished at the Capitol at the expense of the people, and hopefully raise enough money during the re-election that the people won't recognize it. Folks, the first thing we can do to fix the problem is to make sure that we elect people that will choose the right master. That master will either be the establishment, that is the leadership, the old school mentality, or it will be the people. And right now we have too many politicians that aren't listening to the people. I'm going to tell you something. Politicians who listen to the people don't send billions of dollars in foreign aid across the ocean when our people are suffering. Politicians who listen to the people don't allow voting irregularities to take place without sufficient investigation. Politicians who are listening to the will of the people actually are responsible with the taxpayer dollar. They don't waste that money. Politicians who are responsible do the right thing, despite how it may impact them in a Capitol building somewhere. But that's the problem. We're too busy making deals behind closed doors and not taking care of the people's business. And so naturally, when that occurs, when politicians are playing the game up here, either in DC or in any state capital, when they're playing the game, they're causing people to suffer. What does it mean to play the game? It means to tell the people exactly what they want to hear and then vote otherwise. It means to make sure the donors are happy, but not regular folks. And that's what's happening all across the country in every office. Look, you should be angry. Both sides of the equation, to a certain extent, should be angry. Democrats have a dysfunctional establishment. Republicans in DC have a dysfunctional establishment. And at some point between all of that, you just aren't being heard anymore. It's a failure of the system in so many ways. How do you fix it? Now I'll wrap up with this, and then I'll come back later. Here's a thought process. Have you stopped to think that both sides of this equation are focused solely on Washington, D.C.? Both sides of this equation are focused only on trying to control just a few square miles in Washington, D.C. Why? That's not the system our founders created for us. Instead of trying to control one another from Washington, D.C., Why don't we decentralize that power? Why don't we bring that power back home to the states and the people where that power has always properly belonged? It makes no sense to keep putting our faith in leaders at a far off distant capital who have failed us time and time and time again. Congress is the problem. Let me reiterate that. Congress is the problem. A bloated centralized authority is the problem. Too much power in the government is the problem. And at some point, Republicans have to have enough of a backbone to actually insist that our platform be followed. We have a platform, and the platform does not include centralization of power. It does not include the idea that this great national capital whereby all problems will be solved. The cornerstone of Republican politics should be the 10th Amendment. It should be the idea that local government is better government. But that's not what's occurring. You want to fix this system. You want to diffuse the anger in the system. You want to allow people to self-govern, then bring the powers back to the states. Allow California to experiment if she wishes, as unusual the outcome may be. That's California. Likewise, allow Texas to experiment, allow Mississippi to experiment. If we do that, we can find peace in our time. But the idea that we're being forced into a one-size uniform approach from a central capital in Washington, that is antithetical to everything our founders believed.